I want to compliment Dr. Shulkin. Mr. Secretary, I've spent a lot of time with him in the last year, really, in Alaska and Phoenix, in my office, and we had a lot of work to do, but I think he's somebody who's doing a good job.
I apologize for my trip to Alaska coinciding with your service in the military.
Well, sometimes you can't always pull it up, but we'll get you up there next time when I'm there. But I do appreciate the fact that both of you have been up there recently. Dr. Shulkin, you and I got all over the state. And Mr. Chairman, thanks again for allowing me to hold a VA hearing up there. And, you saw the level of frustration, both of you. You saw that the Choice Act, which in many ways got ideas in the Choice Act from what was working in Alaska, came in, and then when it was implemented in Alaska, it just kind of was a fiasco. And I think everybody recognizes that. So then you committed to this pilot program in Alaska that was going to be up and running. Initially, you committed to me in November. We missed that deadline. I mean, not we, you. But it's starting to take hold. I would just like an update on where we are on that pilot program. Mr. Secretary, from a broader strategic perspective, if we're able to fix the big issues in Alaska, I think it's going to give you a good sense of how to fix things nationally. But if we're not in Alaska, I think it's going to spell trouble for what every member of this committee cares about, and you care about, which is fixing the choice program so it's serving our veterans. Right now, it's still not in my state, and I'd like an update just on the timeline and how you see that pilot program going forward.
Well, Senator, first of all, I do want to thank you and acknowledge you've been a great partner in this. You've been very clear with the problems and that you expect solutions, but you've been working with us all along, so I thank you for that. You are correct that we agreed upon a solution that we would try, this pilot program in Alaska, which can serve as a model for the rest of the country. It was delayed. The reason for its delay was actually federal contracting rules. It was very tough for us to, once you're in a contract, actually get agreement to change the rules. But we finally got that done, and as you may be aware, January 11th, the pilot went live in Alaska. We now have actually embedded staff, where actually the TPA staff are in our medical centers.
And are those temporary hires, or are you going to move to permanent hires? I know there's a bit of a confusion on that.
Right. Well, the staff in the VA are permanent staff, and the TPA is committing to getting permanent hires in there. But we wanted to, Tri-West moved very, very quickly to make sure we didn't miss the January 11th date that we had our second commitment to you. And we are now taking this up to a new level. We have to have, again, an additional contracting approval. So there's one more approval to get the full pilot in place, and that is to have VA staff do the care coordination.
And when do you anticipate being able to make that commitment? What date?
Well, we are pushing. I hesitate to give you a specific date because it has to do with contracting law.
Well, I like dates.
Yeah. I will get back to you with a specific date.
Okay.
But everybody knows that's the final piece to get done, and we do believe, we were talking to Senator Tester yesterday about potentially in Montana doing a similar pilot.
Okay.
So.
Okay, it'd be good to get back to us. I'd like the specific dates on that. I wanted to turn to the issue of, and I know we've been talking about it here today, of shortage of professionals, particularly medical professionals. And as you know, Mr. Secretary, Dr. Shulkin, we've talked about this. It's particularly acute in states that actually don't have medical schools. So what we have been doing is working on legislation that can help states, particularly rural states without medical schools like Alaska, but I know there are other members on the committee that would benefit from this, that would encourage the partnership that, Mr. Secretary, you talked about when you were in Alaska with the different health organizations, particularly the tribal organizations in Alaska. So I'd like your commitment to work with us. We have some legislation already drafted up, looking to maybe get it marked up here soon, but I'd like to get your commitment to work with my team on, making sure the VA's good to go with it. I think you would be, but we'd like to do that with you soon.
We agree. We actually worked on that together when I was in Alaska with the
South Central
South Central
Yeah, and
Foundation.
they've been back, and they've been working
And
with us.
I think it's a great plan. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I'm sorry Senator Heller's not here, because we're working together to set up a medical school in Las Vegas, Nevada. We've got to have more medical schools in these states if we're going to expect doctors to locate in these states. And I thought this was a great program.
If I could just add, I actually think that the critical factor to getting somebody to take a job in the VA is having your residency program.
Right.
So it's your postgraduate training that's important in addition to medical schools. That's what we're trying to do with South Central.
Yeah, and that's what our legislation's looking at.
And we could use some help with legislation. What we found is there were 1,500 new graduate medical education spots given to VA through the VACA legislation. We've only filled 372 of those spots.
Yeah.
And the reason is that what we learned is that VA needs the ability to actually help the private hospitals in paying for these spots. They're over their caps, so they get no reimbursement, and that's been a limitation. The hospitals want to, and the foundations want to increase training. We want to increase training, but we could use some legislative fixes.
Thank you. And, Mr. Chairman, just if I may, one other quick, and it's just a commitment from the leadership here. I was back home recently and once again heard about the issue of providers not getting paid and therefore dropping out, which I think has been a problem in Alaska. And then, Dr. Shulkin, you remember, and I've heard about it again, which is veterans who get commitments from the VA to go to providers and then have their medical procedures completed, don't get pay, the providers don't pay, and these guys are being dogged by credit agencies to pay $25,000, $30,000 bills. And I've heard about it again where our veterans who got permission to move forward on a procedure are the guys getting the credit agencies coming after them. And as you know, that's incredibly stressful. And you and I heard about it in Alaska, and I heard about it the last time I went home. So I really want to work with the two of you. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, this is a big deal. That just to get your commitment to be able to work on some ways to just stop this. I mean, it is, you heard it. It's outrageous.
Well, thank you. You're calmer than the last time that you expressed this to me. And look, there is no excuse. We should never be putting the veteran in the middle of this. So we are setting up a special team to deal with veterans who find themselves in this situation so they can reach us. We cannot put them in the middle of this.
Okay.
We recognized before you came in, we have to fix the provider payment issue as well.
Okay.
We committed in one of our breakthrough goals to pay our providers within 30 days, 85% by the end of the year.
Great.
That would be a breakthrough.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.